Hey everybody, so I just wanted to give a quick update on what happened to the Juarez family, who was very recently featured in a video of mine on Public Freakouts Unleashed, where they got kicked out of Eagle Creek Park in Indianapolis by a park ranger, actually a couple of them, who said that they had been trespassed from the property and wouldn't explain their reasoning, at least on the video, for why they were kicking them out. And another thing that happened during this video that caused a lot of hullabaloo was that the officer kept telling the family Vamonos, even though the family was speaking English to the officer the entire time, which struck a lot of people as racially charged and highly inappropriate. Naturally, a lot of people wanted to know if there were actually any reasons behind this, or if, as the Juarez family had contended, this entire thing was because of racial discrimination. Now, there are two facets to this that we have to kind of separate, right? The first is that the officer said "Vamonos" to them, which was caught on camera, very plain, there's no disputing that, and it was, I think, entirely fair to say that that is extremely inappropriate. But when it comes to the matter of the second facet, right, whether or not they were violating the rules of this park, and that was maybe the reason that they were being trespassed, that's a little stickier. We've now heard from both the police department, well, not the police department, but the parks department of Indianapolis, called Indy Parks, a couple of times, and there's been a back and forth. The family has spoken to news outlets. We're going to get into all that in just a minute. This is the clip that started all of this hullabaloo in the first place.
Okay, and you don't want to do that.
Okay.
You have two choices. You get a ticket and you leave,
okay.
or you leave
I'm
now.
here ready. You need to wait. I'm here walking with my wife.
No
I got the baby.
Vominos.
Okay.
Why?
I got ready.
I said so.
You say what?
Because the lieutenant told you to, and I'm telling you to.
Listen.
A lot of the skepticism in my comment section, at least, came from this part in particular, where we learned that, from the officer's words, they had already been spoken to about something. So this is not actually their first confrontation. They had been talked to about some kind of violation, whether that's a real violation or a nonsense one, before this.
You leave the park now.
You tell me one time. You tell me two times. I'm here ready for
what? We here. We can stay in the parking and eat.
Vominos.
We can stay in the parking and
Yeah.
eat.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand it, sir. What you saying?
No, let me see.
Why need to leave the
Load your
apartment?
stuff up
Why?
because I told you to.
So
It's only for you telling me that?
Because they don't want you here, you have to leave.
They don't want me? Why is the reason?
So,
Why do I have to explain this? Give me your ID.
Tell me what
What's
the
your last
reason.
name?
Tell
We
me
don't
what
have
the
an
reasons
ID.
are.
What's your last name?
Tell me what the
No,
reasons
ID.
are.
You what?
Tell me what the reason I'll leave the apartment, the
we
park.
can leave.
I'm ready to leave.
It's criminal trespass if they ask you to leave and you don't leave.
I'm ready to go. You see?
you go.
I'm
Stop
ready.
arguing
I don't
with
have
me.
any car here. My car is over there.
arguing with me
Okay.
and go.
Let me take my
No,
stuff
we need-
and I'm ready. I need my stuff.
If you have to wait because we need to put the stuff together. So
Yeah.
You need to get your
don't.
stuff now.
Let me take my
and go.
stuff. Okay, that's
wait,
great.
You have to wait.
Look, you have just enough time
Agarra
to
video.
get your stuff and go.
I say we got the stuff, so you have to wait. We can take the stuff
that's
and
fine.
don't
Yes.
go like
Okay,
this.
got it.
No.
Put a baby here. I need to wait for that. I got baby. I got stuff. So. Okay, put a baby back in.
So Fox 59, which is Fox's subsidiary for the Philadelphia area, it's a local news station, they picked this story up, and they actually reached out to Indy Parks to get their initial statement on this whole thing before interviewing the Juarez family and getting their side. So this is what the first initial statement from Indy Parks was.
In a statement, Indy Parks said the ranger approached the family for a no swimming and parking violation. The department added in part, Indy Parks welcomes all and expects staff to remain professional and courteous at all times. Indy Parks is working with park rangers to improve communication and ensure that all visitors are treated with respect.
So this is kind of a tacit admission that, yes, this officer was out of line. He shouldn't have said that. That's very unprofessional, right? But then also, they are still accusing the Juarez family of violating the rules that they were accused and trespassed for violating. But we learn what those violations are. And if you go back, they said one was a violation for swimming, which means that they were swimming where they weren't supposed to, ostensibly. and the other was for parking, which means that they were either illegally parked or, because I went to the website and I noticed that Eagle Creek is the only park in Indianapolis that has a $5 entrance fee, perhaps they hadn't paid the fee or hadn't properly placed the sticker in front of their car to be visible. There are a lot of possibilities there, but those are the two key accusations. Now, the Juarez family disagrees even with this.
The family says that's not true and they weren't parked illegally. They say the bigger issue is the ranger yelled at them in Spanish.
Did you feel like it was racial discrimination?
Race discrimination, for sure. That's a discrimination because I don't speak Spanish. So Spanish is my first language I know, but we don't talk in Spanish.
So Mr. Juarez is obviously the most upset and is focusing on the way that the officer was talking to them, which again is on camera. It's not much to dispute there. But he also comes out and quite pointedly says, no, that's not true. We weren't violating the parking rule. That's nonsense, essentially. And this is the part where they explain, actually, the Juarez family explains the initial encounter with the officers before this video picked up.
Juarez and his wife Angela Gonzalez say the ranger first approached the family while their kids played in the sand near the water. They say the ranger warned them not to go past the barrier and into the paid portion of the swimming area.
You're making me mad.
We say, oh, okay, so don't worry, we know him and he say, okay, if not, you...
About 15 minutes later, they say the ranger told them to leave the park altogether because they were trespassing.
So according to Mr. Juarez and his wife here, it sounds like the officer was preemptively telling them not to break the rules by going past the beach where the kids were playing in the sand into the water. And they said, okay, fine, we won't do that. But it really sounds like the officer was preemptively telling them that they were breaking or going to break, suspected of being about to break a rule that they weren't actually breaking.
We reached out to Indy Parks after their initial statement asking for clarification about how they would address the family's claims of racial discrimination. They told us they are committed to racial equity and inclusion. The spokesperson also added, quote, once a person has complied with a request and is no longer in violation of park rules ordinances, expelling that person from the park should happen rarely or preferably never.
So they were asked again after the initial statement. The Juarez family is still not satisfied with that answer. They're reached out to again to give that statement. They give the whole equity and inclusion spiel, but they pointedly, again, refused to say that the Juarez family was not violating one of the park rules. And in fact, they make a point of saying instead, once a person has complied with a request and no longer in violation of the park rules and ordinances, then there should be no reason to kick them out of the park. And the implication here, right, is that the Juarez family was breaking some kind of park rule. They were informed about it. They remedied that issue, and then they were still kicked out anyway. That seems to be the most logical conclusion to draw from that. This, though, still is not what the Juarez family is looking for, and Mr. Juarez's wife actually on camera says, what we're really looking for here is an apology from this officer and an assurance that he's not going to do something like this to anyone else.
Only thing I need from this police, he needs to apologize to my family and me, my kids, and he never try to this again.
The Indy Parks Department also reached out and offered them a free membership to the park. They turned that down, saying this isn't what we're looking for. We don't want free stuff. We want the apology. And while we haven't seen at least any public apology from this officer, and you'd assume they, from saying all we want is the apology, that maybe they'd drop it if they had received that apology, even in private. In the meantime, the officer now faces a disciplinary hearing to determine potential wrongdoing in the video and what happened.
A spokesperson with the Indiana Latino Democratic Caucus also tells me that they will be filing a formal complaint on behalf of the family to the Marion County Citizens Complaint Board. Now, the board will hold a hearing to determine if the park ranger used profane or abusive language, exceeded authority, or acted in violation of IMPD rules and/or regulations. We also reached out to IMPD about the incident. They said in part, IMPD recognizes there are opportunities to improve interactions like this in the future.
So ultimately, it looks like the officer is facing some punishment for his part in all this, including and especially what the Juarez family was most upset about, which was the way he was kind of condescendingly speaking Spanish to them when they were communicating with him in English, which you saw was something they were both very upset about. On top of that, it does appear from all of the context clues that the Juarez family may have been in violation of some rule in this park. Although the thing that they talk about, the water violation, makes it sound like they weren't actually violating that rule in particular of the two rules that were in question. All right, just a quick one today. I thought you would enjoy the extra context to this video. See you next time.